Hello everyone, Sigma7 here, and we are back to do another Best Films of the Year list, this time of 1959, which was the year that my dad was born, and since I figure with his birthday that was a few weeks ago, might as well do one for his birth year. And just like in the last video, these are regarding the films I've seen, so if a certain film doesn't appear, it's probably because I haven't seen it, or I just didn't like it enough to put it on the list. There's quite a few films to get through, so let's just go ahead and get started, shall we? In at number 30, Jazz on a Summer's Day. We begin this list with a documentary/concert film. Set in Rhode Island during the 1958 Newport Jazz Festival, this film mixes images of water and the town with performers and audiences. Unlike some documentaries, this one relies less on narration or dialogue and more on the visuals and music to convey its narrative. If you are a fan of jazz music, especially of this era, this is a film worth checking out as it serves as a time capsule of the time.
Auch der Rock'n'Roll hielt beim Jazzfestival in Newport seinen Einzug. Hier Chuck Berry mit
Sweet little 16, she just got to have about $500,000 signed autograph.
In number 29, Room at the Top. Jack Clayton brings us this British drama that would be nominated for Best Picture. The film centers around a young accountant, played by Lawrence Harvey, who grew up in a low class, so he plans to marry the daughter of a wealthy factory owner. However, things get complicated when he falls in love with an older woman who is already married. What's unique about this film is despite Harvey's character being a jerk and somewhat of a scumbag, the movie doesn't depict him as being 100% terrible, as you can see why he would want to move up the social ladder. It may be my least favorite of the 5 Best Picture nominees, but it's still a solid drama that is worth your time.
Sergeant.
It is, Susan. Alf, can we have the same again, please?
Right, Mrs. Isla.
You're jealous.
I suppose I am.
Well, why don't you phone the girl and ask her to go out with you then? Why don't you? You feel inferior to Jack Wales?
No, I don't.
In at number 28, The Nun's Story. From the director of High Noon and From Here to Eternity comes another Best Picture nominee. Audrey Hepburn plays as Gabby/Sister Luke, a young woman who becomes a nun and struggles with her devotion during a time of crisis, disappointments from the people around her, and of course World War II. It's a beautiful looking film that, while it is long and can be a bit slow at parts, overall does keep your attention all the way to the end. If you have 2.5 hours to kill, this is one worth your time.
I'll have to ask permission of Reverend Mother.
Reverend Mother's not in charge here. This is a government hospital.
Still,
You're paid by the government, and therefore you're responsible to them. They don't pay you to pray, but to assist me.
I understand that.
It's all right. The Reverend Mother's given permission for the operating sisters. I can't have my nurses running off to Mass in the middle of an operation. 5 in the morning, eh? Have you ever assisted at an operation before?
Yes. My father's Dr. Hubert van der Marl.
Oh, I see. You'll say another 5 hours and beg your soup for that little display of pride, sister.
In at number 27, The Diary of Anne Frank. What do you know, 3 Best Picture nominees in a row, and they're all this low on the list. Millie Perkins makes her acting debut in this 3-hour-long adaptation of the 1955 play of the same name, which was in turn based on the actual diary by Anne Frank herself. The majority of the film is just Anne Frank and her family hiding in their home from the Nazis. It does create this claustrophobic feel and tense atmosphere just waiting for something to go wrong. Despite being such a long film where most of it is just in one location, it still manages to be an engaging story that is full of hope, but is still very tragic, especially if you know the story.
In the same class. Son is my best friend.
She returned home from school to find her parents gone. She was alone for 2 days, and then they came and took her away.
Gone?
With all the others.
Oh, no.
In at number 26, Odds Against Tomorrow. From Robert Wise, the director of such classics as The Andromeda Strain, The Day There Stood Still, The Haunting, West Side Story, and The Sound of Music, comes one of the more unique crime dramas of the time. A former police officer, played by Ed Begley, offers a bank job for an ex-con, played by Robert Ryan, and a nightclub singer, played by Harry Belafonte. However, tensions rise when Ryan's character refuses to work with Belafonte simply because he's black. It's a solid crime/heist film with racial tension that does take its time to get to the actual heist, but it's worth it in the end where everything builds up to a thrilling conclusion.
Bank.
Get wise to yourself, Ingram. You're just another black spot on Main Street.
Shut that ugly mouth of yours, Earl. Get in the car.
Someday I'm going to snap off your poisoned head.
Listen to me, Johnny. That cop wouldn't recognize you in 100 years. We have to take some chances. You're a gambling man. Gamble.
Depends on the odds.
Back up, Burke. The odds will never be right. I know how to handle him. I've been handling him all my life. He's no different because he got him a $20 pair of shoes.
All right, Slater. Handle me.
Johnny!
In at number 25, Day of the Outlaw. Robert Ryan appears again in this underrated Western. Ryan plays as a rancher who, along with the citizens of a small town, are being held captive by a group of outlaws led by their leader, played by Burl Ives, who was wounded due to a previous bank robbery. The film is slower than your typical Western, and while it does have some pacing issues, it is still a captivating film with solid performances and beautiful wintry scenery to accompany it. This also marks Andre Teto's final Western film that he directed. Overall, a good Western that more fans of Westerns should check out if they haven't.
I didn't expect to hear music tonight.
They took the women to the saloon with them to dance.
Dance? What are the men going to do about it?
Nothing. Just talking. Crane is talking about going to see Bruin. If he does, looks like you'll get what you wanted without doing a thing.
In at number 24, Compulsion. Richard Fleischer gives us a very unique and very daring crime drama that is loosely based on a true story. Two law school students, played by Dean Stockwell and Bradford Dillman, go on trial for murder of a young boy. I probably should mention Orson Welles stars in this, however, despite the advertising making it out like he's the star, he doesn't appear until a little over an hour into the film. Apart from that oversight, the movie has a very compelling narrative about anti-capital punishment in a time when capital punishment was seen as the norm, as well as a psychological study of why some people turn evil without any form of remorse. It's definitely worth checking out if you're interested in human psychology and the justice system.
You know that guard that brings us up here every day? He's got a sick wife, 5 kids, and a house they're going to throw him out of. I know, I talked to him. For $5,000, he could be looking the other way when we come past the admitting desk. 3 steps. We're outside. There's a car waiting with a motor running.
On a mad dash to the Canadian border, Artie? Okay, so we do it your way and go to trial in the morning. Oh, still one subject that concerns me. The newspapers have been playing it up. The state's attorney may try to do something with it. It's the fact that, aside from each other, you don't have any close friends.
In at number 23, Suddenly Last Summer. Here's a mystery thriller that not enough people bring up. Elizabeth Taylor plays as Catherine Hawley, a young woman who is sent by her aunt to a psychiatric ward to have a lobotomy done on her after witnessing the death of her cousin a year prior that made her go insane. The majority of the film is just dialogue exchanges between Taylor, Katharine Hepburn, and Montgomery Clift, and yet it never gets dull or stale as you do get invested in what is happening and wonder what the truth is. Filled with dramatic performances, terrifying visuals, and loads of symbolism, this is a film that fans of mysteries should check out.
Grieving like a mad woman. I mean, like her heart would break. Well, it was her whole life, you see. She worshipped the ground beneath his feet. Well, sister, when she got this letter from that place with the funny name...
What letter?
Well, from the authorities, I suppose, telling about what happened to poor Sebastian at... What was the name of that place, honey? Where he passed on?
Cabeza de Lobo.
That's it.
Did you see the letter?
Oh, no, heavens no, but I guess it told all about how Sebastian had this heart attack and how Catherine here was not quite herself, poor baby.
I'm myself now, Mama.
In at number 22, Nazarene. Luis Buñuel gives us a very dramatic film that involves about morality and the church. A Catholic priest is forced into exile after hiding a murderer and goes on a pilgrimage through the Mexican countryside. Throughout his journey, he tries to help those according to his religious views, but some of them don't return the favor. It's a very tragic story about a man who is trying to live a good life in a corrupted world, but goes through so much trials and struggles and even at times begins to question his own beliefs. I just hope Criterion releases this film in their collection in the future, like they have with some of Buñuel's other films, so that more people can check it out.
¿Sabe usted de dónde vengo? De ver al juez. ¿Y sabe usted lo que ha dicho? Que si está usted loco. ¿Cómo puede usted admitir en su declaración que sabía lo de la riña y que tuvo a esa mujer escondida en su casa?
No hay más que un modo de decir la verdad, diciéndola.
Pero es que ahora hay quien le acusa de sostener relaciones escandalosas, vitandas y deshonestas con esa mujer.
Calumnia, vil calumnia.
Yo bien sé que usted es incapaz. Además, que si fuera a caer bajo el demonio de la concupiscencia, no lo iba a hacer con semejantes perpentos.
Aquí tienen ya el chocolate.
In at number 21, Last Train from Gun Hill. From the director of The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven comes this very underrated western that definitely deserves more attention. Kirk Douglas plays as a marshal who is after the man who murdered his wife, who is a native. However, tensions rises when the man turns out to be the son of his best friend, played by Anthony Quinn. The film is like if you combine the suspense of 3:10 to Yuma with the paranoia of High Noon. The highlight of the film is the performance by both Douglas and Quinn as these friends who are torn apart by this incident and must make the toughest decision on their parts. It's an intense film that goes by pretty quick, so don't miss out on this one if you haven't seen it already.
I take them both back to Paulie. They'll stand trial for rape and murder.
Matt, you're my best friend. I'd do anything in the world for you. But you leave that boy alone. This is my son you're talking about.
No, Craig. It's my wife we're talking about.
You don't lay a finger on that boy. You're leaving on the next train. I own the sheriff, I own this town, I own every man in it. You're leaving on the next train, man.
All right, Craig, the last train leaves at 9 o'clock. I'll be on it. But there'll be 2 men with me. And one of them will have a cut on his cheek.
In at number 20, Les Cousins, or just the Cousins? Like a very dramatic take on The Country Mouse and the City Mouse, this French new wave drama tells the tale about 2 cousins who share a flat with each other. Things go fine at first until a woman gets involved and tensions rise. It's overall a simple plot, but with a great execution and great performances by its 2 leads, whom are very different from one another. It's not the best French New Wave film of the year, and we will get to that one later, but it's a solid one nonetheless.
On est cousins, pas frères jumeaux. Vous savez chacun la gueule de votre emploi. C'est-à-dire? Hein? Bah, vous connaissez Paul, vous connaissez aussi.
In at number 19, Imitation of Life. Douglas Sirk gives us the second film adaptation based on Fanny Hurst's 1933 novel of the same name, the first being John M. Stahl's version from 1934. And while I do love both films, I do prefer this one. The story deals with widower and daughter, Laura and Susie, who invites maid and daughter, Annie and Sarah Jane, to live with them and be a live-in maid. Both women deal with the struggles of motherhood. Laura, who has a desire for fame, causes tension between her and Susie, while Sarah Jane struggles with her African-American identity, which causes her to have a strong disdain towards her mother. It's a powerful, stressful, and important tale on racism of the time. It's a harsh film, but one worth watching.
I was going to show you I could be.
You weren't being colored. You were being childish. I don't understand why you would want to hurt your mother or me.
I told her she has to be patient. Things will work out.
How? Miss Laura, you don't know what it means to be different.
Have I ever treated you as if you were different? Has Susie? Has anyone here?
No. You've been wonderful, but
then don't ever do this to us again. Or to yourself.
In at number 18, Pickpocket. You can really count on Robert Preston to showcase how to utilize film minimalism when telling a story. A young named Michael takes up pickpocketing as a way to pass the time, but is quickly arrested. Not long after his release, his mother passes away, and despite the objections from the people around him, like his friend and his neighbor, Michael teams up with some thieves to showcase as well as improve his talent of pickpocketing. And that's pretty much the gist of it. The story isn't too complex. A guy has a talent for pickpocketing, gets arrested, and when he is released, tries to get a job. His desires to commit felonies is just too strong. However, it's the way Preston tells the story with the use of silence with sound effects. It's hard to explain, but just check out the film yourself. It's a quick watch, only at 75 minutes. It may not be my personal favorite of Preston's. I do prefer A Man Escaped and Ahazar Balthazar, but this is still a great film nonetheless.
C'est là, dans ce petit café de Rochechouart, que j'appris la plupart de mes tours. Il me les donna sans hésiter et de la meilleure grâce du monde. Il fallait faire travailler mes doigts, les assouplir.
In at number 17, Fate of a Man. Now here's a Russian war film that doesn't seem to get brought up as much as other Russian war films like Come and See or The Cranes Are Flying. Which is a shame because this film is almost up to their level. Really, it's in the title of the film. A man loses his family during a bombing, and what follows is just tragic event after tragic event. It's an effective piece that shows the struggles and somber journeys that the people of Russia had to endure during World War II. The film is currently on YouTube, so definitely check it out if you haven't already.
Их разгромили там. Передай вашим. Ротфронт.
К этому времени наши уже своротили Германии скулу на бок, и фашисты перестали пленными брезговать.
Und der Sturmführer gleich mit meldet sich zur Stelle. Erlauben Sie? Um Stab einen Brief zu übergeben.
In at number 16, Fires on the Plain. We go from a Russian war film to a Japanese one. Kon Ichikawa brings us a story about a soldier who is abandoned by his company and is left wandering about the Philippine island of Leyte. What's even worse is that he has tuberculosis. It's somewhat of a slow burn that doesn't focus on action or battle scenes. It really is just 100 minutes watching the soldier wandering a desolate landscape alone, trying to survive. It's just one of many stressful war films to come from Japan, and it's not the only one on this list, as we will see another one later in the countdown. Well, since we are halfway through the list already, I figured let's take a quick break and cover some honorable mentions. These are the films that I did like, but not enough to make to the top 30. First up, there's the Italian war dramedy The Great War, the Italian war romance drama Violent Summer. Harry Belafonte appears again in this post-apocalyptic drama The World, the Flesh, and the Devil. The Polish mystery thriller Night Train, Robert Rossellini's war drama General della Rovere, the Czech stop-motion animated adaptation of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Two westerns that didn't make the list are Bud Buttigieg's Ride Lonesome and Jack Arnold's No Name on the Bullet. Gregory Peck stars in the slow-burn post-apocalyptic On the Beach. Rock Hudson and Doris Day star in the rom-com Pillow Talk. Samuel Fuller brings his crime mystery film The Crimson Kimono, the documentary on the salt mine Araya, the Indian romance drama Kagaz Kapul, or Paper Flowers. Richard Burton plays as an angry university graduate in Look Back in Anger. Henry Levin gives his take on Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth. Cary Grant and Tony Curtis star in the war comedy Operation Petticoat. Terence Fisher releases 2 Hammer films, both starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, with The Hound of the Baskervilles and The Mummy. And finally, William Castle releases 2 films, both starring Vincent Price, with The Tingler and House on Haunted Hill. Again, I liked all these films, but not enough to make it to the top 30. So with that all the way, let's go ahead and continue this list with the top 15. In at number 15, Black Orpheus, the winner at the Palme d'Or for Best Foreign Language Film of that year, and I can definitely see why. The loose retelling of the Greek legend Orpheus and Eurydice is set in Rio de Janeiro during Carnival. It has great music, beautiful costuming, and set pieces, and overall just a fun watch that not enough fans of the Criterion Collection seem to talk about. If you want to watch something that's at least beautifully stimulating, this is one worth checking out. And at number 14, The Bridge. I guess 1959 really was just the year of war movies, since between the main list and the honorable mentions, we've seen quite a few, and spoiler alert, there's still a few ahead. With this film, it centers on a group of German boys who are assigned to defend a bridge. The boys, who are filled with excitement and enthusiasm at the beginning, eventually learn the hard way on the true brutality of war, and even worse, learn just how insignificant their assignment truly is. It's a tragic story that is still worth at least one viewing. In at number 13, Sleeping Beauty. Of the 5 Disney animated films released during the 50s, this one would have to be my favorite. While the story is pretty basic and the prince and princess are not very complex, everything else is just great. The animation looks like something out of medieval tapestry, the music is memorable, and the other characters are great, from the 3 good fairies, who are the true protagonists, the kings, and of course one of Disney's greatest villains, Maleficent. A villain so powerful and vile that no wonder she would end up as the leader of the Disney villains in the Kingdom Hearts franchise later on. Overall, it's a beautiful fairy tale by Walt himself that is just fun all around. Not to mention, it has one of the greatest climaxes in any Disney film.
No, it cannot be! Now shall you deal with me, O Prince, and all the powers of hell!
And at number 12, Ballot of a Soldier. Here's yet another Russian war film that was released within the year. After blowing up a tank, a young soldier is allowed some time off to go visit his mother, but on the way he ends up going through some obstacles and helping those he meets on his journey, and even falls in love. All of this while he tries to get home in time before his time runs out. It should be noted that the director of this film was a war veteran himself, so it makes this film very personal to him. Like some of the other war films on this list, it's less on the battlefield and more on human experience and how war affects it.
А вы верите в дружбу?
Конечно, верю. На фронте без этого пропадешь.
Нет, это я знаю. А вот между парнем и девушкой.
А почему же? Бывают девушки даже лучше ребят.
Я тоже так думаю. А вот некоторые считают, что возможна только любовь.
Ерунда. Я, например, дружил с одной девчонкой. Дружили, никакой любви не думали.
Может, не замечаешь, а сам любишь?
Ее-то? Ну нет.
Может, Анна?
Да она девчонка совсем. Соседка наша, Зойка.
In at number 11, BenHur. Yeah, I really doubt this film needs any introduction. When people describe BenHur as one of the great American epics, that's not an exaggeration. This nearly 4-hour-long epic is best known for the chariot race, which is a phenomenal scene. The rest of the film is still incredible. Charlton Heston gives an excellent performance as the titular character, whom you really feel the pain he goes through being sold into slavery and being separated from his family. This is also one of those rare cases where I prefer the remake over the original. And I think the original from 1925 is still a great film, but this one does improve a lot of elements from the other one. Not much else to say, but if you have 4 hours to kill, then definitely watch this Best Picture winner. In at number 10, Floating Weeds. One of two films that was released in 1959 to be directed by Yasuhiro Ozu. This story is about a group of actors who arrive at a seaport in southern Japan, and the majority of the film is just watching these actors and seeing what they get up to during the season. It's a beautiful looking film and it's considered one of Ozu's finest works that can be uplifting but at the same time heavy and emotional, especially with its ending. Check this one out if you haven't.
まあまあ七分や初日にしちゃようないわ
まあ見ててみ知り上がりや
ならええけど
大丈夫やんカリアの時やってそうやったやん姉さんこの時々バカに弱気やね
In at number 9, Good Morning. And here is the other film that Ozu released that year, and it's quite a different film from Floating Weeds. A couple of young boys refuse to eat or speak after their parents refuse to buy a television. And that's pretty much it. Granted, there are other things going on, like housewives gossiping over a neighbor's new washing machine, or husbands trying to look for a job as a salesman. Really, the film is a satirical look at consumerism in post-war Japan. This film is also a remake to Ozu's 1932 classic, I Was Born But, which I have yet to watch, but apparently this film is said to be an improvement of that one. Nonetheless, this is definitely one of the more light-hearted films to be released this year. Give it a watch if you want something more uplifting.
まだ口聞かないんだろうか。でもちょいと面白いじゃないか。子供から見りゃ大人の挨拶なんて無駄ってやみんな無駄みたいなもんだからね。そうね。私なんかその無駄ばっかしって自動車売ってんだから。でも言わなきゃ売れないしね。そうだよ。その無駄が世の中の潤滑油になってんだよ。そのくせ大事なことはなかなか言えないもんだけどね。そうだね。無駄なことは言えてもね。あんたたちその口よ。何？好きなくせに好きだって言えないじゃない。なんだい？節子さんよ。いつだって翻訳のことかお天気の話ばっかりしてて、肝心なこと一つも言わないで。ああ、それは違うよ。違わないわよ。分かってるわよ。
In at number 8, North by Northwest. Easily one of Alfred Hitchcock's best works. Cary Grant plays as Roger Thornhill, who is mistaken as a spy, which then leads to all kinds of misunderstandings and a cross-country chase. It's a pretty insane film, but then again, that's Hitchcock for you. Some of the most iconic scenes include Grant being chased by a plane in the middle of nowhere, to him and Eva Mary Saint climbing on Mount Rushmore. It's a fun film overall that's definitely worthy of this list. In at number 7, Rio Bravo. Quite a few westerns were released in the year 1959, and this one by Howard Hawks is easily the best of them all. John Wayne plays as a sheriff who keeps custody of a murderer whose brother is trying to help him escape. What follows is shootouts, some murders, and an old cripple played by Walter Brennan complain about nothing that important. It's definitely one of the best westerns all around, and Howard Hawks at his finest.
Red wing settles in her nest. It's time for a cowboy to dream. Purple light in the canyon, that's where I long to be, with my three good companions, just my rifle, pony, and me, gonna hang my sombrero on the limb of a tree, coming home, sweetheart darling, just my rifle, pony, and me.
And number 6, Anatomy of a Murder. Otto Preminger gives us this 160-minute long courtroom drama that is very little action and mostly dialogue. And yet, despite that, it is a very engaging watch. James Stewart plays as a lawyer who is hired to defend a man who killed someone for raping his wife, or so the wife claims. What follows are arguments, discussions, debates on morality, and some dark secrets waiting to be unfolded. It's a long one, but one worthy of your time. And while Ben-Hur may have earned its Best Picture win, for me, this is my favorite of the Best Picture nominees.
Your Honor, the people called this witness only to show the cause of death.
Your Honor, the entire report was offered as evidence, and the report contains this information about spermatogenesis.
Overruled, Mr. Ludwig. The witness may answer.
Yes, I made that examination on the deceased.
Now, would you tell the court your findings?
Spermatogenesis was occurring at the time of death.
In other words, the deceased in life was not sterile. He could produce children.
That is correct.
Now, doctor, if a woman says that she has had intercourse with a certain man, and the man is proved fertile, even though no evidence is found in the woman's body, could a lawyer, say a prosecuting attorney, could he use this as evidence that the woman is lying?
Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning.
And number 5, Hiroshima Mon Amour. This is definitely one of the more devastating films that came out that year. Set in Hiroshima after the end of World War II, the film centers on a romance between a French actress and a Japanese architect who have deep conversations about their life experiences and their past romances, all while intertwining their stories with the devastation of the atomic bomb on the city and the aftermath of it. It's a powerful, touching, and tragic film overall, and serves as one of the pinnacle French New Wave films.
Pourquoi parler de lui plutôt que d'autres?
Pourquoi pas?
Non, pourquoi?
À cause de nos verres. Je peux seulement commencer à te connaître. Et entre les milliers et les milliers de choses de ta vie, je choisis nos verres.
Comme autre chose?
Oui.
Non, ce n'est pas par hasard. C'est toi qui dois me dire pourquoi.
C'est là. Il me semble avoir compris que tu es si jeune, que tu n'es encore à personne précisément. Cela me plaît.
Non, ce n'est pas ça.
C'est là. Il me semble avoir compris que j'ai failli te perdre.
And at number 4, Some Like It Hot. Billy Wilder gives us what is easily one of the best comedies to come out of the 50s. Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon play as musicians who witness a mob shootout and make a run for it. Their only chance is to hide out in an all-girl band, as well as disguise themselves as women named Josephine and Daphne. During all this, they befriend a woman played by Marilyn Monroe, who has dreams of marrying a rich playboy. The film overall is just filled with laughs from beginning to end.
Get a load of that rhythm section. I'm a girl. I'm a girl. I'm a girl. I'm a girl. Good night, sugar.
Good night, honey.
Honey. Hey, she called me honey. Oh, honey. Hey, what are you doing?
I just want to make sure that Honey stays in a hive. There'll be no buzzing around tonight. Supposing I gotta go, like for a drink of water or something. Fight it. Well, suppose I lose. Suppose it's an emergency. Pull the emergency brake.
In at number 3, The Human Condition Part 1, No Greater Love, and The Human Condition Part 2, Road to Eternity. The first two parts of Masaki Kobayashi's Human Condition trilogy were released in 1959, whereas Part 3 would be released in 1961. After World War II, a young pacifist named Kaji hopes to avoid becoming a soldier, so instead goes to work at a prison camp, where he also hopes to aid in the welfare of his prisoners. But after an attempted escape by Chinese prisoners, Kaji is arrested and faces the chances of him becoming a soldier or something worse. Later in Part 2, we see Kaji trying to revolt against the cruelty of some of his fellow soldiers. As these films progress, we see Kaji going from an optimistic pacifist to someone who starts to lose hope after witnessing the cruelty that war brings with it. These are very long films, with Part 1 being 3.5 hours long and Part 2 being 3 hours long. Combine them with Part 3, released 2 years later, with its 3 hour and 10 minute long runtime, and you have a trilogy that is over 9.5 hours long. These films overall are some of the most powerful and heart-wrenching war films you will ever see, and it's unfortunate that not that many people know about them. If you are a fan of war films and you think you've seen some of the most grueling and tragic ones out there, well, let's just say Saving Private Ryan, Hacksaw Ridge, and 1917 are all child's play compared to these movies. In at number 2, Apur Sansar, or The World of Apu. Well, we went from the first 2 parts of a trilogy to the last part of a trilogy. What started with Path of Panchali in 1955 and Aparajito in 1956, this film concludes the story of Apu. In this film, we see him as a young man struggling to find meaning in his life after losing so much in the previous films. He wants to become a writer, but things change after he ends up getting married to a young woman, who at first isn't thrilled in marrying someone who came from a poverty-stricken village. But the two do eventually come to love each other, and, well, that's all I can say without going too much into spoilers, but all I can say is that this film, along with the previous 2 films, form one of the best trilogies of all time. I will definitely have to check out more films by Satyajit Ray in the future, now that I've seen this magnum opus.
Bold, ambitious. Bold. শিক্ষার ভেতর দিয়ে স্ট্রাগলের ভেতর দিয়ে আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি তার কুসংস্কার গোঁড়ামি সমস্ত কেটে যাচ্ছে বুদ্ধি দিয়ে ছাড়া সে কোনো কিছু মানতে চাইছে না কিন্তু তার কল্পনা শক্তি আছে তার অনুভূতি আছে ছোটখাটো জিনিস তাকে মুভ করছে তাকে আনন্দ দিচ্ছে হয়তো তার ভেতরে মহৎ একটা কিছু করার ক্ষমতা আছে সম্ভাবনা আছে কিন্তু করছে না কিন্তু সেইটি শেষ কথা না সেটি ট্র্যাজেডিও নয় সে মহৎ কিছু করছে না তার দারিদ্র্য যাচ্ছে না তার অভাব মিটছে না কিন্তু তা সত্ত্বেও সে জীবন বিমুখ হচ্ছে না সে পালাচ্ছে না এসকেপ করছে না সে বাঁচতে চাইছে সে বলছে বাঁচার মধ্যে সার্থকতা তার মধ্যে আনন্দ he wants to live.
And finally, number 1, The 400 Blows. To anyone who's a fan of the Criterion Collection, French New Wave cinema, or just cinema in general, yeah, this really shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone. Francois Truffaut gives us a tale about a boy named Antoine, who lives a pretty difficult life that involves some of the most unsympathetic adult figures, including his teacher and even his parents. Antoine spends his days with his best friend as they try to plan for a better life than the one they are currently living in. You really do feel for Antoine and find yourself sympathizing with him, even when he does things that get him into trouble. It becomes even more emotional when you take into account that this film is loosely based on the director's own life, and how he found comfort at the cinemas. This film definitely belongs up there with the Apu trilogy, Back to the Future, The Lion King, and A Silent Voice as some of the greatest coming-of-age films ever made. It's a brutal and heartbreaking story, and is my pick for my favorite film of 1959. So, those are my favorite films of 1959. So, what are your favorite films of this year? Did I introduce y'all to any? Comment below, let me know below, and as always, I will see you all in the next video. Later.